Well, well, man, it's nice to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, same.
So I'm looking forward to getting into the new album, but before we do that, I want to know, 5 years ago, this pandemic was completely rearranging our lives, especially musicians. How did you get through that era, and how did it either influence this album or the way that you do things as a musician today?
Yeah, actually it really did influence the album in a few ways, I guess. I think I think one thing that it probably galvanized for me a little bit was everything stopped, of course, for everybody, and like most gigs and all that sort of stuff. And I lived in the city that decided to lock everybody down the most. So Melbourne was just insane with lockdowns. So all the work stopped, everything stopped. So that had obviously a financially negative effect, but the other side of that was it kind of gave space in a way to maybe think about things in a different way, or maybe to go back to things in a new way. It wasn't that I was tired of gigging, but it was maybe I was a little bit stale in doing things the same way. Things have become a little bit sort of, I don't know, set or something, maybe with combinations of players and the things that we did and all that sort of stuff sort of started to become maybe a little bit too routine. So it was a chance to break all of that. So once that all got pulled apart, I decided that I didn't want to put it back together the same way. So yeah, I think that's partly some of the approach to the record was like that, like kind of maybe not wanting to write tunes the same way or have them go in the same direction or have people play roles the way that they would have played roles beforehand.
So talk to me a little bit about Apperceptions, the album. What was kind of the overarching kind of vision for this, and how does it feel that it's complete and it's out in the world? How does it feel?
Well, I feel good that it's finished. It took about 2 years of writing, as in things surviving the writing process, and then Justin and I, the drummer, we played together for quite a few. Well, we've known each other for a very long time, like 20 years, but like we kind of played around with these ideas on the record for at least 3 years. And, like just trying to push each other in different directions. Like he's always had the ability to play things that were sort of well beyond my ability to keep up with in terms of time or getting off the grid, like getting away from time or being able to play multiple, time signatures in different hands and things like that. So it was just good to sort of try and use that in a compositional sense and see what would happen if, you know, like some of the ideas were silly and some of the ideas we kept, but I would say to him something like, cool, what if all of the toms were in time and all the cymbals weren't? Like, can you give me that kind of feel? And let's jam on that for a bit. Or what if it goes the other way? What if you're not allowed to hit the snare drum ever? Like what happens if you don't have a snare? What happens if I'm not allowed to play this string? Cool. Or, you're gonna try and play in that time signature and I'll play in this one against it. And, we're only allowed to link up every 8 bars or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun, like, going through that process and coming up with that kind of stuff. And, he was so willing to do it. And I think that's kind of why some of the voices or the way that the whole thing comes together like that, because Anton was willing to do that as well.
So what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
Hopefully it sounds slightly different to what's going on with some other things at the moment, like I don't know. I'm hoping that it's open enough that and dense enough that you can listen to it more than once and hear something in it that you didn't hear the first time. And there are a few relationships that are embedded in it that span over longer periods. So the idea is it's three composed, and if you're listening to it in one go, then it all interlinks, but it all interlinks on different levels and in different ways. So it's not about it's not about tonality or something like that interlinking it. It's more there are relationships between melodies, rhythms, and chords that that move throughout the record in different ways and interlink the compositions. So I'm hoping that, someone would listen to it and over time start to hear what some of those things are. And, knowing that that's kind of the complete opposite to the way most people listen to stuff now. Like, everyone listens to digitally and it's a sound bite and then you flick it and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
But for those that want to go back and do it the old way, like I still like listening to records from go to O. I still think that that's the best way. Like I still can't get past that. So
Yeah.
I want to absorb it. I want to hear what an artist did and take the whole thing in.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think that's why vinyl's coming back. I mean, I think it has come back. I think part of it is the sound, but I think too, people want to get back to that storybook notion of divulging
Yeah,
audio the same way they would a book. Yeah.
yeah. And be immersed in it. Like, have it as a world again, like something that takes your attention and you give your attention to, not just flitter it.
Yeah. And we need that more than ever in America now.
Well, it's there. I think it's there for anyone who wants it. It's there. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just about just what's going on, politically that's permeating our reality. I think there's the levels of escapism and that's necessary. And I think the creative world and artists and musicians are providing such a oasis for people to feel grounded to humanity as though things make sense in a world that increasingly doesn't make sense. So,
That's nice. I hope it's true.
yeah, no, I think so. Yeah. So let me ask you this. What made you pick up the guitar in the beginning? Take me back to your roots. What made you pick that instrument and what were some influences that kind of led you to where you're at today?
I didn't honestly pick the instrument. It was just that was the one thing that we had in the house.
Yeah.
So, and like it sat in the corner forever and a day, and I didn't really have any interest in it at all. And um. I can remember hearing Kenny Loggins on the radio and thinking, oh man, that sounds so cool. I don't know what that is, but like I just like the way that this thing sounds. And I wanted, well, this is in the back of the day of cassette tapes. Like I wanted that. I wanted to, have a friend of mine. I gave it to a girl who was in the same class as me because her brother like apparently had this record collection and would let people tape stuff off his record collection. So I asked him for Kenny Loggins and he gave me all this sort of heavy metal kind of on the tape and basically said you should listen to this instead. And I kind of did, and I didn't understand any of it, and I knew it didn't sound like Kenny Loggins, which but that sort of started it. Like I kind of listened to this sort of English metal was kind of like Venom and bands like that, like, a really obscure kind of English Celtic Frost stuff that wasn't even popular when it was kind of around, I don't think. And yeah, I just sort of sat there and started figuring it out on the guitar and kind of found that I could pick most of it up. And so, yeah, it was kind of went from that to sort of rock guitar and weirdly enough, my parents had planned this holiday like when this is like maybe 6 years later. We went to Hawaii and my parents gave us each $20 and we went to what I think was like some kind of massive ballpark or gridiron field in Hawaii where they were having like a car boot sale. For whatever reason, my brother found this guy selling Shrapnel Records, which was like this, great guitar label. So we pulled our money together and spent $40 on these crazy guitar albums and came home with like 10 guitar albums that you couldn't get in Australia at the time anyway. And it was like we just listened to those for about 3 years and tried to figure them out.
Wow.
That was kind of what turned my ear on, I think, to hearing things other than maybe what most people kind of grow up listening to.
You know, it's interesting. Kenny Loggins was totally the soundtrack of my childhood. He was in all the movies. He was always on the
Yeah,
radio. He just wasn't one of those guys that you looked at in a way of like a Michael Jackson or another big star, but he was just as big. But he was just kind of always tucked in the background, always a part of everything, especially movies.
yeah,
He was the
yeah.
soundtrack to everything, you know? So,
I think that's I think we've got the same association. Like I just like I don't know. There's just something about him and that time
yeah,
and like I don't know. He's growing up with movies and things like that. Yeah, I don't know. He just even now I hear it and I kind of think, man, it's really cool. Like this,
yeah,
he's just got something about him that's kind of I don't know. Huey Lewis is the same. Like I don't listen to that music at all, but
yeah.
every now and then it comes on and you hear it, and it's just like some part of my brain just goes, "Oh, you're 8 years old, and this is awesome."
Yeah. You know, I got a whole bunch of vinyl recently. This has been a few years. And there was a Loggins in Messina, and my wife just flipped out. Oh my God, my dad used to listen to that all the time. And then I talked to her dad, and they just gushed over the early days before he became Kenny Loggins. And he just had such a
Yeah, right.
long lineage, you know, of songwriting and putting together
Yeah.
music. It's been the other day there was a headline that came out that he put a cease and desist out to the White House to stop playing Danger Zone because they were playing
Oh,
it
oh,
unauthorized. So
okay.
he's always somehow in the news. He always maintains his age. He's like a
Oh,
timeless music
yeah.
icon.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's just odd. I don't, even like as we're talking about it now, it just makes me think like he really wrote just stuff that sort of resonates, I think.
Yeah,
And I think, yeah, and it's again, it's like it's not something that I listen to now at all. I haven't thought
right.
about in forever, but like it's definitely part of whatever, like I mean, for me, it's kind of like it moved into away from that and into the jazz thing, and then it sort of moved into the fusion thing. And then once I heard Holdsworth, it was kind of like, oh, that was it, like I that was sort of, and that story you hear quite a bit. Like there's a lot of people that are like that, and but it's sort of, it's one of those daunting things where you hear it and it's kind of like, oh, that's it. There's no one better. But there's also like, there's no point trying to imitate it because you're not going to get near it. But
Yeah.
that's sort of not the point of it either. I don't think, like. So yeah,
Yeah, you almost don't have to have Kenny Loggins in your playlist because you're going to hear it. It's gonna pop up somewhere. He's always there.
yeah.
So, so I live I'm in Kansas City, but I live specifically in the town of Lee Summit, which is the home of Pat Metheny. And whenever I talk to
Oh,
guitarists,
right.
you know,
Okay.
there's always some kind of hearkening to him or a guitarist of his ilk. And it's weird to think that all of it started in this sleepy little town of Missouri. But who was that for you? Who was in the jazz lexicon that really got your heart going?
Um, well, look, probably every everyone that you could think of that's sort of like mainstream sort of jazz guitar. At some point, I've spent time clearly listening to it and trying to absorb it. But the ones that weren't so mainstream, I think that I really liked were like Jimmy Weibel, like just I don't know, something about him is I always found fascinating. Joe DiOrio, same thing, like just a very different sound. Like, I mean, I love Metheny and Schofield and Stern and all that sort of stuff and guys of that ilk, but to me that they are sort of mainstream. Like, I think I always gravitated slightly to the people that were a little bit left of center of that, and then the thing that I always appreciated was somebody who didn't sound like somebody else.
Yeah,
So it's like I guess in a silly way, like I kind of like the tradition of all musics, but I don't like the imitation in the tradition.
yeah,
Like as in I don't, I you know playing standards or something like that is great, but it's just I just knew that that's not what I wanted to do. Like that's sort of and players that could do that, fantastic. But I just know that that wasn't the thing that I wanted to do. Like trying to develop your own syntax or your own voice was always slightly more appealing. So anyone that was like that, I really liked. And even though those guys like Matheny, like is just, you know, but it became mainstream, I think, more from the way that it was presented to me, like as in, everybody likes Pat Metheny, and it's not that I don't like Pat Metheny, it's just that it's the same thing. Like if you're going to be into jazz guitar, you're going to hear it.
Yeah.
Whereas some of those guys in the margins you don't hear so much of, and
Yep.
those voices have kind of fascinated me somewhat more.
What was the first live jazz show you saw that blew you away?
One of the first things I actually saw was Holdsworth. Like, well, I think I was 19, and he came out and played in a pub out here, and it was like literally maybe 200 people. And yeah, like that just I just couldn't, I was just dumbfounded by what I was hearing and seeing and feeling. Like it was just all kind of all at once. But outside of that, like I saw one of the first times I think, like internationally, like going overseas and seeing stuff, I saw Jim Hall playing with Dave Holland in a duo at Iridium in New York, and that was just spellbinding. Like, and then uh, like, yeah, that was just something else. I saw Schofield with Pat Martino on a double bill at the Blue Note like 2 days later. It was just kind of, and then Tribal Tech with Scott Henderson was like a day after that. And in my mind, that was like, well, that must be what New York is like. Absolutely everybody who's amazing is actually still here and playing. But I think I just got lucky on a 2 week run where it was kind of like there are a lot of dudes in town who were not normally there, and yeah, getting to see them and talk to them. Like I couldn't, I think that was one thing that blew me away about New York is you could actually talk to those guys. Like you could see them at the bar or they were outside having a smoke or something, and it was
Yeah.
just kind of like, it's just so weird for someone to come from the other side of the world where you just don't see anybody of that stature ever playing here anyway, as a rule. And then, being able to actually shake their hand and go, "Hey, I really like what you do. I know you've heard that a million times, but like, here's the million and one." So yeah.
Yeah. So what is it that you like the best about being a professional musician? What gets you up every day?
Um, I think the thing that is still fascinating is like when you still discover things, like when something happens, like you know, you go to play something or you think something and there is this funny feeling where it's like you can see this new path or something slightly shifts in its orientation in the way that you perceive it. And it's kind of like, oh, I could think of it that way. And all of a sudden there's something else. So that I think is still a really motivating. And even sometimes it's like thinking about that sort of thing and like playing it on something like maybe there's just something that runs in the background, like I don't know, like a blues or something like that, where it's kind of like it's not really something that I ever plan on sitting down and playing, but maybe you're playing through it and then all of a sudden one thing occurs to you and it's kind of like, oh, I never thought about that. Like I've played this thing now for 20 years and I never thought of that one thing, and oh look, that one thing works.
Yeah.
Like I still think that's so much fun, to find something like that. It's just so rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, why do you love this music we call jazz?
I think because it allows you to have your own voice, and if you want to be in the tradition, it allows you to do that, and if you want to be outside of it or push it or fray it or cross it over or do whatever it is that you want to do with it, there's space for you to do that there too, and find other people that are willing to do the same thing with you. So I think that's its greatest appeal to me is that it doesn't have to be any one thing, and you don't have to be any one thing in it. You can change in it as well. So if you want to do that, you can do that. If you don't want to do that, no one's saying you have to.
So if you could get into a time machine and go back in the history, the annals of jazz, and see one live show with your own eyes, where are you going?
Um, Probably Miles Coltrane Cannonball.
Okay, good choice.
Yeah, yeah. Just there's just something about that lineup, or maybe the early. If not that, then maybe the early iteration with with Wayne and Herbie and Tony, where it's kind of like where they're getting it together. Those early formations of those groups where they're sorting it out and it's not quite sorted out yet. Like watching them or hearing them experiment, like the Plug Nickel and things like that, or the that live in Europe concert where I think Coltrane's pretty much trying to get kicked out of the band. Where he's just kind of like, okay, I'm going over here. You guys do that. You're over there, and I'm over here on this island. Like I just think that's fascinating. Like watching, because we know what they become and we know how it evolves now. But like, if you were there then
Yeah,
to see that thing being created in front of you, where it was like it wasn't set in stone, and those roles and voices aren't fully formed, I think that would be just awesome to feel it in that room and see it as it was going on.
yeah,
I'd like to see how they looked at each other and how they cued things too.
yeah, that would be cool. So at the end of the day, Nick, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone on the bandstand, everyone in an educational sense, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh man. I got no idea. Uh, Different things to different people and myself, I guess. Like I don't know. Like that's a good question. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like it changes. Like it really does. You know, I guess I'm just trying to be more of a friend to myself over the last little bit. And I think that comes with age, where it's just sort of like, well, I'm going to start doing things for me, or thinking, trying to create things that are fun for me and for others that find it fun, you know.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think maybe but I don't know if that's of any consequence to anybody else, and if it's not, that's totally cool. I don't need that, but yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to be, is sort of maybe a little bit more aware of, yeah, maybe there's only, so many more hits that you're going to get to have, like as in it goes at it sort of thing. So trying to make the goes count a little bit more now.
I dig it. So if anyone wants to pick up a brand new copy of your album, Apperceptions, or previous work, Catch You Live, any of the good business, where do they go?
It'll come out on Bandcamp. I think it's on Bandcamp. It's
Okay.
probably the easiest one to get. And then I think it's on, iTunes and Amazon and all those other ones. But yeah, I think Bandcamp's the way to go.
Yep, I agree. Nick, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Great to meet you. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity.